Have you ever looked at your lab results and felt that sinking fear in your chest, wondering if your kidneys are quietly losing the battle without warning? Because I can tell you this, the biggest danger my patients face isn't just kidney damage. It's how silently and quickly things can get worse when you don't know what to look for. And that's the part that keeps me up at night as a doctor, knowing that one small missed sign can push someone toward kidney failure far faster than they ever imagined. But here's the truth you need to hear right now. You are not powerless, and today might be the turning point you've been waiting for, because I'm going to give you the exact roadmap I use in my own clinic to stop that decline before it becomes irreversible. And as we move into this, I want you to stay with me, because every minute you understand, every detail you absorb becomes another piece of control you take back over your health. And I promise you, by the end of this, you won't just know what's happening to your kidneys, you'll know exactly what to do next. My name is Dr. Johnny, and if you've ever wished someone would finally explain your condition in a way that actually makes sense and gives you real power, not fear, then this is the moment to lean in. When I first sit down with a new kidney patient, I can almost predict the moment their expression shifts. It's that brief but unmistakable moment when they finally understand that they've been looking at their lab results for years without truly understanding what any of those numbers mean. And if that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most people glance at their labs, feel a brief spike of fear, and then hope everything is fine. But hope is not a plan, not when it comes to kidney disease. The real danger isn't the number printed on the page. It's the slow, quiet drift of those numbers month after month unnoticed until it's too late. That's how kidney decline speeds up. That's how people land in places they never imagined. So let's make this clear, simple, and empowering. In IgA nephropathy, 3 numbers decide more of your future than anything else: protein in your urine, your eGFR, and your blood pressure. Master these 3 and you're already ahead of most patients worldwide. Protein in your urine, measured through ACR or PCR, tells us how active the inflammation is. The closer it is to 0.5 grams per day or below, the quieter the disease. Then there's eGFR, your kidney function. We're not chasing perfection, we're chasing stability. A slow decline is manageable, a rapid one is not. And blood pressure, especially keeping it under 120/80, is absolutely critical, because high pressure inside the kidneys accelerates scarring like sandpaper, wearing down delicate tissue. Multiple studies from Harvard and the National Kidney Foundation confirm this again and again. Uncontrolled blood pressure is one of the strongest predictors of kidney failure. Let me share a story. Mark, a patient in his early 40s, came to me convinced everything was normal because he felt healthy. But when we reviewed his old labs, a pattern emerged. His proteinuria had been rising for nearly 2 years, and his eGFR had slipped just enough to signal trouble. He didn't feel sick. There were no warning signs. But the decline was happening silently, which is exactly how kidney disease progresses. Once we tracked his numbers properly and adjusted his treatment, everything shifted. His protein levels dropped, his eGFR stabilized, and for the first time, he felt in control. He wasn't lucky, he was informed. And informed patients always do better. Here's what most people don't realize: numbers only become powerful when you track them over time. A single result means nothing. A pattern means everything. That's why I encourage every patient to keep a simple log spreadsheet notebook, anything that helps you see trends instead of isolated snapshots. And to take it even further, use the IgA Nephropathy prediction tool from QXMD. It pulls together your protein levels, eGFR, blood pressure, and even your biopsy findings to estimate your risk of kidney failure over the next 5 years. Not to scare you, but to give you clarity. Clarity leads to control. When your risk trends downward, you're winning. When it stays high, you act early. You're not guessing anymore. You're leading your own health. So let me ask you directly. When was the last time you truly tracked your numbers, not just glanced at them? If you don't know your trends, you don't know your direction, and you deserve certainty, not confusion. Update your log every 3 to 6 months. Set reminders for labs and monitor your blood pressure at home every day, morning and evening. Consistency turns chaos into clarity. And as powerful as this step is, it's only the beginning, because knowing your numbers doesn't stop the disease. Taking the right actions does. And that leads us straight into the next part of your roadmap, a part most patients underestimate even though it can completely change the future of their kidneys, which we're about to dive into now. When we talk about protecting your kidneys, most people instantly think of advanced treatments or new medications they've seen online. But the truth, the part most patients completely overlook, is that kidney protection doesn't start with the newest drug. It starts with the foundation. And this foundation is so powerful that when it's optimized correctly, it can cut your risk of kidney failure almost in half. Yet most patients never get the full benefit, not because they don't care, but because no one ever explained what optimized actually means. You see, when I review a patient's medication list, I can almost always spot the same problem. They're on the right medications, but they're not on the right doses. That's the difference between taking medicine and treating disease. ACE inhibitors or ARBs medicines like lisinopril, losartan, or irbesartan aren't just blood pressure drugs. They reduce pressure inside the filtration units of your kidneys and dramatically lower protein leakage. But here's the catch: most patients are started on a low dose and never increased, even though the strongest protective effects only show up once you reach the maximum tolerated dose. The science is clear. Studies consistently show that fully optimized RAS blockade reduces proteinuria far more than partial dosing. But too many patients stay stuck at 10 millimolars when their kidneys would respond better to 20 or even 40 milligrams. Not because their doctor doesn't care, but because time is short, follow-ups are rushed, and no one revisits the plan. Let me tell you about Denise, a 52-year-old patient who came to me feeling frustrated because her protein levels wouldn't budge. She had been on lisinopril for almost a year, faithfully every single day. But when I looked at her chart, I noticed she was still on a beginner dose 10 millimolars. Her blood pressure was fine, she had no side effects, and her labs were stable, meaning she could absolutely tolerate more. We increased her medication slowly over the next few weeks, and just like that, her proteinuria dropped by nearly 40%. Nothing else changed, no new drugs, no dramatic diet shifts, just optimizing the medication she already had. And her kidney function stabilized for the first time in years. Stories like hers aren't rare, they're common, and they're powerful reminders that the basics are not basic at all, they're the backbone of survival. And then there's the second pillar of your foundation, SGLT2 inhibitors. These medications used to be seen as diabetes drugs, but the last 4 major trials, including the landmark DAPA-CKD study, proved something astonishing. SGLT2 inhibitors reduce kidney failure risk by 30–40%, even in people without diabetes. That's not a small effect. That's a game changer. They protect your kidney cells, lower inflammation, reduce pressure inside the glomeruli, and stabilize kidney function in ways we didn't even dream of a decade ago. Yet countless IgA patients still aren't on them, often because someone once told them you don't have diabetes, or because they assumed the cost would be impossible. But patient assistance programs exist, generics are expanding, and most insurance plans now recognize how essential these drugs are. If you're not on an SGLT2 inhibitor, yet the real question isn't, why would you take one? It's, why wouldn't you? So here's what I tell every patient who sits in front of me: the foundation is non-negotiable. Target a blood pressure under 120/80. Push your ACE inhibitor or ARB to the highest dose your body can comfortably handle. Add an SGLT2 inhibitor unless there is a medical reason you cannot take it. And don't rely on clinic readings alone. Monitor your blood pressure at home daily. The patients who are consistent, who understand their medications, and actively participate in adjusting them are the ones who stabilize. The ones who guess, who assume, who wait passively, those are the patients who decline faster than necessary. And as we move forward, I want you to hold on to one simple truth. Most of the progress you can make against IgA nephropathy comes from doing the fundamentals correctly and consistently, long before you ever need advanced medications. But while this foundation can dramatically change your trajectory, it's still not enough on its own, because there's another step one that patients often reach too late, even though it has the power to stop the disease from advancing when the foundation isn't strong enough. But only knowing this foundation isn't enough, because there's another factor far more surprising and far more misunderstood that quietly determines whether your kidneys stabilize or continue to decline. And that's exactly what we're about to uncover next. When your foundation is solid but your protein levels still refuse to come down, That's when we step into the world of targeted therapies, the treatments designed specifically for IgA nephropathy. And here's something most patients never hear clearly. Reaching this step doesn't mean you failed. It means your disease is active enough that it needs a more direct intervention. And thankfully, modern science has finally given us tools that strike at the heart of the problem instead of just managing the symptoms. One of those tools is targeted release budesonide, known by many as Nefecon or Tarpeo. And unlike traditional steroids that flood your entire body, this one works almost exclusively where IgA nephropathy begins the gut. You've heard me say it before, IgA nephropathy is not a kidney disease that happens to involve the immune system. It is an immune disorder that happens to injure the kidneys. That's why the NefIgArd trial was such a breakthrough. Over 2 years, patients who received targeted budesonide preserved an average of 5 mmol, 1.73 times more kidney function than those on placebo, a difference big enough to delay kidney failure by years. And their proteinuria dropped significantly even when foundation treatment was already optimized. But numbers alone don't tell the whole story. Let me share the moment this medication truly earned my respect. A patient named Alex came to me after 6 months of perfect adherence to his ACE inhibitor and SGLT2 inhibitor. He did everything right, nailed his blood pressure, tracked his labs, adjusted his diet, yet his protein levels hovered stubbornly above 1.3 grams per day. He was discouraged, tired, and afraid that nothing was working. But his biopsy showed active immune deposits, meaning his disease wasn't just stable inflammation, it was ongoing, and the foundation alone couldn't quiet it. We started targeted budesonide, and within months his proteinuria cut nearly in half. His eGFR stabilized, his anxiety faded, and he finally felt like the disease wasn't calling the shots anymore, he was. That's the power of precision therapy. But targeted therapy has expanded even further, and that brings us to the second major option, sparsentan, marketed as Filspari. Unlike regular ARBs that block a single pathway, sparsentan blocks 2-angiotensin and endothelin, both major drivers of kidney inflammation and scarring. In the PROTECT trial, patients on sparsentan achieved a 40% greater reduction in proteinuria than those on irbesartan alone. That's not incremental improvement, that's transformational. And for many patients whose proteinuria stays above 1 gram despite optimal therapy, sparsentan isn't just a next step, it's a lifeline. Now, I know the question you might be thinking, how do I even talk to my doctor about this without sounding pushy or confused? And I get it, the medical world can feel intimidating. But here's what I tell every patient: your doctor can only treat you as effectively as the information you bring to them. Walk in with your trends, your proteinuria chart, your eGFR changes your blood pressure log. Say I've been optimized on ACE, ARB, and SGLT2 for 6 months, but my proteinuria is still above 1 gram. Based on the NefIgArd and PROTECT trials, am I a candidate for targeted budesonide or sparsentan? That's not being pushy, that's being informed. And informed patients always get better outcomes. And if insurance becomes a hurdle, and yes, it sometimes does, don't give up. Both manufacturers offer assistance programs, and many patients have succeeded after appeals supported with trial data. The system may be slow, but persistence pays off, and your kidneys are worth the paperwork. But even with these incredible therapies, there is something even more influential on your long-term outcome, something I've seen shape patients' futures in ways medications alone never could. And that brings us to the part of the roadmap that most people underestimate, even though it holds the power to slow kidney damage every single day of your life. Because just knowing about targeted therapy isn't enough, as there's another factor far more day-to-day and far more overlooked that quietly determines whether your kidneys stay protected or drift toward danger. And that's exactly what we're stepping into next. And this is where everything becomes real, because medications can only carry you so far. What determines whether your kidneys stay protected day after day isn't just what you take, it's how you live. And I don't say that to overwhelm you. I say it because lifestyle is the one thing you touch every single day, the one variable you can control more consistently than any prescription. In fact, research from the National Kidney Foundation shows that lifestyle habits can influence kidney outcomes just as strongly as baseline disease severity. That means your daily choices are not small, they are therapeutic. Let's start with the simplest but most powerful piece: sodium. People roll their eyes when doctors talk about salt. But here's what most don't realize. High sodium doesn't just raise blood pressure. It pulls fluid into your tissues, increases pressure inside the kidneys, worsens protein leakage, and accelerates scarring. It's like turning up the pressure in a fragile pipe network that's already strained. Patients who consistently keep their sodium under 2 grams per day see lower proteinuria, better blood pressure control, and slower kidney decline. The science is overwhelming, but the real challenge isn't knowing the number, it's knowing where the salt hides. Restaurant meals, canned foods, sauces, seasoning packets. That's why the heart of a kidney-friendly life begins in your own kitchen with labels under 140 milligrams per serving, asking for no salt added and swapping flavorless salt shakers for herbs, lemon, garlic, and spices that bring life back to your food without stressing your kidneys. Now let me tell you about someone who taught me how powerful this truly is. Maria, a 63-year-old teacher, walked into my office convinced that her kidneys were failing faster every month. Her proteinuria wouldn't budge, her blood pressure spiked unpredictably, and she felt defeated. But when we looked closer, her diet wasn't unhealthy, it was just unknowingly loaded with salt from soups, deli meats, and sauces. She had no idea. When she lowered her sodium consistently, her blood pressure normalized within weeks. Her proteinuria dropped by nearly 30% over 3 months without changing a single medication. She looked at me and said, "I didn't realize I was fighting my kidneys every day without meaning to." That moment has stuck with me ever since. Now let's talk about protein, another misunderstood pillar. People hear kidney disease and think they need to avoid protein completely, but that's not the goal. Your body still needs protein. The key is the right amount. About 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. Too much protein forces your kidneys to work harder. Too little leaves your body weak and malnourished. And when you choose protein, lean sources like egg whites, chicken breast fish, tofu, or plant-based proteins are ideal because they produce fewer metabolic byproducts and less acid load for your kidneys to clear. Study after study shows that balanced protein intake reduces glomerular pressure and stabilizes kidney function. This isn't about restriction, it's about precision. And the third pillar, a plant-predominant diet. Not vegan unless you want to be, not extreme, just consciously shifting your plate. Half vegetables, a quarter lean protein, a quarter whole grains. That's the kidney-friendly plate supported by the DASH and Mediterranean diets, both proven to lower inflammation, reduce cardiovascular risk, and slow CKD progression. Fiber helps control blood pressure, antioxidants, calm immune triggers, and whole foods reduce the acid load that accelerates damage. When you eat this way, your kidneys breathe easier, and so do you. But lifestyle isn't just about what you eat, it's also about what you avoid. NSAIDs like ibuprofen and naproxen can constrict blood flow into the kidneys and worsen scarring. Even occasional use can be harmful in IgA nephropathy. Smoking it doubles or even triples the speed of kidney decline. That's not an exaggeration, it's documented in multiple cohort studies. And stress, though invisible, can wreak havoc. Elevated cortisol raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep, increases inflammation, and pushes your kidneys into a state of constant tension. That's why mindfulness, yoga breathing techniques, or even 5 minutes of quiet every day matter more than people realize. I remember a patient named Jordan Young, ambitious, constantly stressed by work. His labs worsened during every high-pressure period of his job. Once he incorporated meditation and a nightly wind-down routine, his blood pressure stabilized, and surprisingly so did his protein levels. You could literally see the impact of stress management through his lab results. His kidneys weren't just filtering better, his life was. And through all these stories, there's a pattern. Lifestyle isn't a side note, it's a treatment. But even these proactive habits can only protect you if you know how to monitor your body's response. And that leads into one final step that might matter more than everything we've covered so far. Because just knowing how to live kidney-friendly isn't enough, since there's one more factor often ignored and shockingly underestimated that determines whether you catch danger early or let it spiral unnoticed. And that's what we're stepping into next. Everything we've talked about so far, knowing your numbers, optimizing your foundation, using targeted therapies, and building a kidney-friendly lifestyle, only works if you monitor your progress with consistency. And I want to say this clearly, IgA nephropathy is not a disease that rewards intensity. It rewards consistency. It rewards the people who pay attention, who check in with their bodies, who don't let 6 or 12 months pass before they look at their labs again. Because IgA nephropathy doesn't usually crash overnight, it drifts. And unless you're watching, you won't feel the drift until it's already a steep slide. Monitoring is not about fear, it's about awareness. It's about catching a problem while it's still small enough to reverse. When your protein levels start climbing, you want to see it early. When your eGFR dips a little faster than usual, you want to know before that dip becomes a dive. When your blood pressure starts creeping upward, you want to fix it before it quietly injures your kidneys for months. And every study we have confirms the same truth: early intervention saves kidney function. Late intervention only slows the damage. So here's the structure I give my patients. If your numbers are stable, your proteinuria low, your eGFR steady, your blood pressure controlled, then seeing your kidney specialist every 6 months is enough. But if your proteinuria is above 1 gram, or your eGFR is declining faster than expected, or your blood pressure is unpredictable, then you need visits every 3 months, not because anything is wrong, but because we want to keep things from going wrong. And whenever you start a new medication, you don't wait months to check how your kidneys respond. You get labs at 4 weeks. That's the window where changes show up, both good and bad. It's also the window where we make adjustments that prevent long-term harm. I once had a patient named Samuel, a man in his late 30s, who had been stable for years until one winter when he caught a simple viral infection. Nothing dramatic, a fever, a cough a week off work. But for people with IgA nephropathy, infections can trigger what we call a flare, where blood and protein suddenly spike. Samuel didn't realize this and assumed everything would settle on its own. By the time he came in, his labs were far worse than usual. We managed to stabilize him, but we both knew something important. If he had gotten labs done right after the infection, we could have reacted sooner and prevented weeks of unnecessary decline. And from that moment, he monitored like a CEO watches their financial reports. His kidneys improved, his confidence improved, his sense of control returned. And this is why I always say, you are the CEO of your kidney health. CEOs don't guess. They track, they review, they adjust, and they make decisions based on data, not fear. Your KPIs are simple: proteinuria, eGFR, blood pressure. These 3 numbers tell the entire story of your kidneys. And the more familiar you are with them, the more empowered you become. But monitoring isn't just about numbers. It's also about connection. Staying plugged into a support community, whether it's a foundation, a Reddit group, or a patient forum, gives you perspective, encouragement, and motivation when things get tough. It reminds you that you are not doing this alone and that others have walked this path, stabilized their kidneys, and built a future they once doubted they could reach. And now we've arrived at the final turning point of this journey, the moment where everything you've learned comes together. Because all these steps only matter if you understand what they mean for your life, your future, and the power you have to shape it. And it's here in this final message that the real transformation begins. Because just knowing how to monitor your progress isn't enough, as there's one final truth, deeper, more emotional, and more empowering, that determines whether you just manage IgA nephropathy or rise above it entirely. And that's exactly what we're stepping into next. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this: you are not powerless in this journey. You are not waiting for your kidneys to decide your future. You are the one steering the direction now. And every step you've learned today brings you closer to stability, to confidence, and to the peace of knowing you finally understand what's happening inside your own body. I've seen patients turn things around in ways they never thought possible, not because they were lucky, but because they chose to show up for themselves. And you're already doing that just by being here. Before you go, I want you to do something for your future self. Save this video so you can come back to these steps whenever you need them. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week I share new science-backed strategies to protect your kidneys, lower your risk, and help you live a longer, healthier life. I want you to have access to the best, most up-to-date medical guidance, not only when something goes wrong, but long before it ever does. And here's the truth I hope stays with you long after this video ends. IgA nephropathy is not the end of your story. You are stronger than this disease, smarter than this diagnosis, and far more capable than you may feel on your hardest days. You have a roadmap now. You have knowledge. You have a community, and you have a future that is absolutely worth fighting for. So keep going, keep learning, and keep taking care of the only body you will ever have. I'm proud of you for staying until the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, stay hopeful, and take care of your kidneys. They're working hard for you every single day.